You know where to go, when to go, and how to do it right. Take our quick exit readiness assessment. Go to leavingil.com. That's leavingil.com. Or call 224-800-6979.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
My next guest is a veteran investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker, somebody who for decades has been on a mission defending faith, family, and freedom in America. In fact, he is the founder of the Digital Intelligence Project and president of Christian Action Network. Martin Mawyer, how are you?
I'm doing fine, John. How are you doing?
Very good. It's a very impressive, lengthy career of defending really what is Americanism and the premise of America. And we face certain issues that I don't think many people understood we would face. I actually have a clip here that I had sent to my producer that I found to be, quite upsetting. And the arrogance and the confidence of this religion to pretend it's going to conquer my country, I find aggravating. I want you to hear this.
Islam will rule the world again. No other faith has its morality.
When we say America will be a Muslim country someday, inshallah, people look at us with skepticism. But the reality is, that's our goal. Everybody has their own idea what they want America to be. We believe the best thing for Islam, best thing for America is Islam.
So, Martin, this religion is not a religion that wants to convince people. It's a religion that wants to conquer people. I find it infuriating. And I'm really sick and tired of politicians siding with the religion that tells you they're going to conquer us.
Yeah, so, we keep calling it a religion, but it's actually a political system. And, Congressman Chip Roy made that point a couple weeks ago when he held a hearing on Sharia law in the United States. And, he said, he opened this hearing, and I thought this was quite, astonishing in contemporary society, as much as we like to accept minorities. But he says the very foundation of our Constitution, our legal system, and our way of life is in serious peril because of Sharia law. Now, that's a pretty profound statement, wouldn't you say, Shaun? I mean, he's not beating around the bush here.
Well, the more you look into it, listen, the reality is we've had a luxury in this country not to be faced with this kind of insanity. And it's even more than a political system. To me, it's a cult. And you could tell a cult by the insistence on the force of capitulation and cooperation and the threat that if you leave this religion, they will kill you. This is a religion that, in my opinion, is completely manufactured, completely made up. It is a religion of hate, intimidation, and violence. And the safest Muslim to be around is one that doesn't believe it any more than I do. And the problem is they're afraid to say that because the religion tells you they will kill them if they leave it. Now, I've left Catholicism many years ago. You can leave Christianity, you can leave Judaism, you can leave Buddhism, you can leave any other religion, but only one threatens to kill you. Why in the world would an American politician, based on the freedom of choice, in theory, representing American interest, even entertain this nonsense?
Yeah, that's a good point about this being a political system and a cult, is that cults don't allow their members to question the leadership. You are to obey. You're not to disobey the rulings of the imams. And that is what makes typical cult a cult. You're nothing but a servant to the system. You do what you are told, and you live under those laws. And we know what those laws are. They are Sharia laws. And Sharia law is, if you read the Quran, it's basically a repressive legal regime. And that's exactly what Chip Roy calls it, a repressive legal regime, because it deals with civil law, criminal law, financial systems, judiciary structures, and political authority and beyond. So when you're inside of Islam, it's not about like in the other religions where you're out there worshiping a god and trying to better your life in a moral sense. You are part of a system that, as you opened up with your clips, is to conquer the world, conquer the United States. We did a film called Europe's Last Stand. We released it in 2014, and we are premiering it again this November in Palm Beach, called Europe's Last Stand, America's Final Warning. We spent 3 years traveling into Europe, interviewing imams. We've interviewed politicians. We interviewed people on the streets to see exactly what was happening inside of that country. And we learned a lot, and I suggest that people should watch this film because what we disclosed there is a warning to what's going to happen to the United States. And it's interesting, Shaun, when we interviewed these Europeans, they actually loved the freedoms that were in America because they now know they're living under the repression of some of this Islamic culture out there. But they did warn us, and they said, this will come to you. It will come to America. And America could be the last continent in this Western Hemisphere that could be Sharia free. And we need to take a stand now to resist it. And that's why we did the film, so people could learn exactly how this movement moves into countries and what they do when they get there and what their strategy is.
Martin, the history has been really quite clear since the 622 creation of this cult. It has been very, very clear. It is a cult that lives not just to conquer, it lives to dominate. And when you look at this through the idea that you're an investigative journalist who has produced many documentaries, you don't really have to do much probing. You don't really have to go far. In fact, as I speak to you right now, Christians are being slaughtered throughout Africa, throughout the Middle East, throughout areas that do not have the law of the citizen the way America does. And when you look at what's happened in Europe, the way in which the media and the government have silenced and enriched the terrorists, silenced the media from telling people about the decades of rape areas, rape cults, pedophilia, incest, and the welfare state that has massively expanded and really is being exploited by these very people. And this is another issue that I think we need to secure the fact that we are not using tax dollars to enrich the Somalian Islamo-Nazis the way they have been in every state they live. I am amazed at any American that would want their money to be stolen in the name of an entitlement, and then we know end up back in Somalia, which cannot exist any more than any other of the Islamo-Nazi countries can exist on their own.
Well, there's a silent majority out there who are learning what Sharia zones are and what Islamic zones are that are beginning to be built inside the United States. But we're not allowed to really talk about them because once you talk about them, you're labeled as a nut, that these things don't exist. You're labeled as being Islamophobic, and people self-censor themselves. And again, another frequent saying that we heard from people in Europe is that they now have to self-censor themselves out of fear of losing their jobs, out of fear of getting some type of retaliation by Muslims against them. But because we are self-centering or censoring ourselves, fewer and fewer people quite understand what these legal Sharia-controlled zones are all about, how they operate inside, apart from the public view. Typically, they're called no-go zones in Europe. I call them Sharia zones because I think that's a little bit better description of what these zones really are. But you're not really allowed to go in and talk to these people, investigate them. They have their own courts in these zones. These courts do not mirror our type of courts where there's a stenographer, there's a defendant that has an attorney representing them. There's a Sharia judge, but they don't keep records of what those decisions are and what the punishments are on the people who are inside of these courts. And that's one of the things that Chip Roy really wanted to point out in his congressional hearing, is that these Sharia courts are being implemented into these zones in the United States, and no one really knows what's going on. The Democrats would come back and say, and they did in these hearings, and say, well, people are going into these courts voluntarily. Why can't they go in voluntarily and abide by whatever ruling the Sharia judge makes? But it misses the bigger point. These people really aren't going in voluntarily, Shaun. You know that. I know that. These women and these children are being told to go into these Sharia courts and the rulings that are being implemented inside of there. They're not being represented, but even more importantly, they don't even know most of the time what their American rights are because they're never taught that. They're taught in these Islamic schools. They don't know the U.S. Constitution.
Well, and the idea that we would allow this notion that someone can censor your speech tells you how easy it is to get soft-minded people to conform to rules they need not abide by. This is the problem, like Islamophobia. Well, that would mean I'm afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it. I'm repulsed by the subservience it's based on. I'm repulsed by the traditions. I'm repulsed by the beheadings. I'm repulsed by the beating of the women, the mutilation of the daughters, the stoning, the insanity of the costumes. I'm repulsed by the whole thing. Now, do I have the right to say that? Or am I supposed to stifle my own reaction, my own judgment? And that is what the goal always is, to stifle the judgment.
Yeah. So in Europe, there was a case where some cab driver had the King's Cross on their cab, and then they lost their license because the King's Cross was offensive to Muslims, so they weren't allowed to have it on the cab. Another woman in Europe was wearing the Christian cross, and she lost her job because that offended Muslims. She made the argument, her attorneys made the counter-argument, well, Muslims are allowed to wear the hijab. Why can't this woman wear the cross? Their answer was, well, wearing the hijab is a religious obligation. They have to wear it. You don't have to wear the cross. It's offensive to these people. So therefore, she's going to lose her job. Another person lost their job because he went out to get lunch for the people, came back with bacon sandwiches. That offended some of the Muslims inside of that company, and he was fired for offending the Muslims. So we got to understand what Sharia law is really about. And if you think you're not a Muslim, it won't affect you. That is not true. That is certainly not true. It's not the case of these people in Europe.
What's nauseating to watch is we were a safe haven for the people who are unfortunate enough to be born in these totalitarian cult areas. We were the place they could come and be protected. And now we are turning into the place they still have to fear. And this is the beauty of being older, Martin. We're very blessed with the fact we're older because we used to take solace in the fact we were a refuge for these people who grew up under this totalitarian fear and the cult. They could come here and be free. And now we're importing that. And if it reminds me of the best defenders against communism is a Cuban or a Soviet from the Cold War era. And the best defender against Islamo-Nazism is somebody who was born under there, rejected it, and came to America for freedom of religion, freedom of their own opinion. And yet it's the politician who's supposed to represent them that embraces their tyrant. Why is it that people are so stupid as to see that if they wanted to live under this rule of this cult, there are many countries that are all hellholes. Many countries they could go to. Live free and be happy. Go ahead. I dare you. Go to Iraq. Go to Iran. Tell me how wonderful it is.
Yeah, so the ones that are coming here and saying that they're coming for the freedom of the United States really are coming because they want to infiltrate the United States, all part of the Muslim Brotherhood plan to secretly infiltrate the United States and to be able to destroy the United States from within. But they have a narrative to say, oh, no, we love America. We love America. But then, like the recordings that you played earlier, inside of these Sharia zones, you hear the complete opposite. Oh, no, that's just a strategy. We tell people this is the front we want them to believe. This is what we really believe internally, and that is to fulfill the goal of the Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate and to destroy from within.
Now, Martin, does your investigative reporter little Sherlock Holmes gene you have in your body probing around, does it start to quiver when you really look at the money aspect of who is exactly swindling Americans in these entitlement benefits? It appears to me, if we were just sitting around smoking a cigar together, Martin, you know what I would say to you? I would say it would appear to me that these programs these entitlements that are given to temporary protected status people are actually created, crafted, produced, and funneled by politicians who know that the money is being stolen. That, in fact, it isn't just the citizens that come here from these Islamo countries that send the money back. It's the politicians who do not abide by any oath because they hate the principles of America, but they gain powers of position in Congress, in the federal government, in their local governments to funnel money back to the Islamo Nazis. And that is the real crux of the problem. The acorn that grew into the problem we now face is from Washington, D.C., and not just the fact that Islamo Nazis wanted to come here and conquer. We're the benefactor, ironically enough. Do you ever feel that way?
Well, yeah, you raised an interesting point about where's the money coming from. I'm sure you are aware of the so-called epic city that is being built near Dallas.
Oh, yes.
That's now called the Meadows. And listen to this. So they're going to have 1,000 residential units there with this huge mosque. And I question, how do they get the money to do this? Where's this money coming from? I've run a nonprofit for now almost 40 years. We haven't come even close to be able to build someone one residential unit, much less 1,000 residential units. So where is the money coming from? And why aren't the reporters out there, those investigative journalists out there trying to figure out, well, where did they get this money? Where's it stemming from? And go ahead.
To see the difference, there's another aspect to this, and it's called law and regulation of the state and the city and the county and the rest of it in the country. You know, the idea that you could segregate an entire area and admit that you were going to nullify American law in the name of a religious law, there is no way you can own the real estate itself. That is a violation of the covenant and a bundle of rights of what real estate in America is. This is the problem too, Martin. So few Americans understand the difference between America. The difference is we're built on property rights. And nobody can come in and say, I am going to run anything that is against federal law, that is against local law. You cannot nullify law and beat your women and have this cult that thrives and keep out. Here's the other thing. You can't keep out other people. That is a very strict real estate issue. You cannot segregate your real estate and say people of another faith, another sexual proclivity, another anything are forbidden from buying real estate. That is a federal law. People go to jail for that. That's the issue. It's only because politicians, weak-minded politicians who don't know right from wrong, and citizens who don't understand the beauty of America even entertain this. Seize the land back. Eminent domain has been used for decades. Use eminent domain and take the land back. They violated American law. Game over.
Yeah, so you raised an interesting point there, and that is how are they getting by with violating these laws? Now, I guess in fairness, the epic city, the Muslims that are controlling that, originally came out and said only Muslims will be allowed to buy these residential units. They were quickly had a legal argument from Paxton and Texas saying, well, that's not legal to do in the United States, so you're going to have to open the doors to everybody. And they said, oh, no, we never intended to be just Muslims. That was a mistake. It is available for everybody. Now, right after that, now they go to a public swimming pool, rent the place, and say only Muslims are allowed for this event. So you know internally in the heart that they are simply there to create a 1,000-unit segregated Muslim area, and they know who's going to be buying those residential units. They know it's not going to be you and me. We're not moving into a Sharia-controlled zone. So they say, well, we'll just drop that. Everybody understands what we mean. We already put it out there. This is for Muslims out there. And therefore, we're going to go to a public swimming pool paid by tax dollars and say we're going to hold an event that only Muslims are allowed to attend. And I read through some of the regulations, if you do attend this Muslim thing, that men have to keep their gaze lowered to the ground when they're around a woman. You know?
Yeah.
And
so there's no such thing, Martin, as a Muslim bikini? No Muslim thongs? Nothing?
They actually show pictures of, they have 3 swimming outfits they recommend that women get for this event. I wish you could see them. They're on our website. If you go to our website, you can see the pictures there. But I'm not going to, what man would even lift his gaze to see these things? They're not even swimsuits at all.
No.
They look like outdoor winter gear.
Yeah, they're Cuba Gooding Jr. in that deep sea diving movie. That's what I'm envisioning. It's going to be awful hard to do a lap in that costume. You know, the other thing is I like to live where women wear bikinis, so I live in Florida. And what's funny is to see the difference of the Florida governor and how he immediately put a stop to this, because this was happening in Florida. Immediately put a stop to it from the governor's office. I'm shocked at Abbott. Why hasn't he put a stop to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a developing story down there, and I think it's going to turn out to be exactly what we all know it's going to be. A rather very large, probably the biggest Sharia zone inside the United States. And it's going to be ruled by these imams. One of the imams that is part of the development has said that people who commit adultery should be executed. People who engaged in homosexual sex acts should be executed. Now, regardless of what you think about the morality of this stuff, there's nowhere in the Christian Bible where we execute people for moral sins. We don't take them out, we stone them, we don't throw them off of buildings. We give them an opportunity to repent and find a new way in their life. We don't punish them through cutting off their hands or lashing their backs or executing them. We did, I don't know if you recall, but we did a documentary on some dozen or so terrorist Islamic training camps that are around the United States run by the Muslims of America. Now, inside the Muslims of America, they operate with Sharia law there. And in that Sharia courts that they would have, if you violated something, you could be put into a hole that's 30 feet deep with some food, some water, and a lid over top of it. You could be there for 30 days because you violated a Sharia code. And these people in these communities have no idea. They don't have to abide by this. They can escape, but they don't know that, so they go into these holes. Other people are tied to a post, and they are beat with a board because they violated some type of Sharia code, something they watched on TV.
It's a slave cult, and now you've explained why there are no good disco bands out of these Islamo nations. Martin Mawyer, I love what you've done with your whole dedication to the better living, the principles of Americanism and Christianity, and what you've done alone with the Christian Action Network, which is the nonprofit you started in 1990, is fascinating enough. But as a founder of the Digital Intelligence Project, I really am impressed with you, and I wish I could say more to help you in this mission. Where's the best place to keep in touch and focus on everything you're doing to help America, stay America?
Sure. Thanks, Shaun. But the best thing to do is go to our website at christianaction.org. At the very top, you can subscribe to our newsletters called the Patriot Majority Report. It's free to get. We put our podcasts there. We put many very important articles there. You'll see some articles on our website, but more investigative articles are found inside of our Patriot Majority Report newsletter format. And we send out an email when we have new material up there. New films, all of our films are on that system. So go take a look at it. We got some music up there, a whole bunch of stuff. I think people will enjoy it. So that's at christianaction.org, top of the website.
Thank you, Martin Mawyer. I really appreciate everything you've done, and I appreciate you making time for me tonight. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Shaun. Talk to you later. Bye-bye now.
Absolutely. Bye. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
He believes in freedom, capitalism, and individual liberty. And because of that, he's become an enemy of the state. He's Shaun Thompson, and this is The Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
You need a construction company, but who?
Call Crestcom.
A construction company you can trust that shares your Christian and conservative